New York Rick, do you have an update on Mr. Kevin James?
No update on the King of Queens.
Are you the new King of Queens now that he is playing footsie with us?
I thought
here?
I was before,
Yeah.
but I mean now it's a guarantee. I'm the King of Queens.
So, but does it look like 320 or what? No, not really.
I'm not the one who gives the odds. I'm the one that bets once they're out. So
Well, that is
I
a
can't
perfect
really...
segue to what we have up next. Are you ready for it?
I'm absolutely ready.
All right. So here we are. New York Rick has reached the midway point of this little experiment of ours. We started with UFC 152. He finished up 4-3 after that card. If you're not familiar with Rick's picks, Mr. New York Rick back there has been given the opportunity to predict fights, and I gave him the stipulation that if he has an above 500 record after the fourth week of this little UFC run here, 152, Fuel TV 5, FX 5, and 153, he can stick around and still do picks for us. After week 1, he was 4-3. After week 2, he is
9-4.
Wow.
It was a good week.
That is a good week. That's 5-1.
Correct. Only one I whiffed on was Sass Wyman.
Of course. The only tough one.
Oh, come on.
The other ones were so easy.
Oh, come on.
You picked all favorites except for Struve, right?
Oh, except for the main event. No big deal.
I mean, but come on. Who really thought Struve was an underdog going into that
Here's
fight?
the thing, though.
Yeah.
I picked all favorites, and guess what? They won.
That's true. That
That's
does
what
count
the pick,
for something.
That's what you pick. You pick the winner. You don't pick the one that's the sexiest pick. Oh,
Right.
you're gonna make a boatload of money if this long shot underdog knocks out John Bones Jones. Not gonna happen.
I like it. You're right. You bring up a good point. It is MMA, and I don't think that the odds makers have really figured out how to handicap MMA just yet. Do you agree with that?
I think they're doing a pretty good job now. There was a point there where I was scratching my head at a lot of lines, but I found that recently it's been pretty accurate. But for this card, I had some interesting picks if you want to get into it.
I do. Let me just set it up. It's UFC on FX5. It takes place this Friday. The action kicks off at 4 p.m. Eastern on Facebook. There are 2 fights there. Then 5 p.m. Eastern, bunch of fights. I think there's like, 6 fights on Fuel TV. I'll be on that. And then there are 4 fights on FX at 8 p.m. Eastern. Goes up to the Ultimate Fighter at 10 p.m. Main event, Bigfoot Silva, Travis Brown. Co-main event, Jay Haran, Jake Ellenberger. What do you got? Who are we starting with?
Let's start with the main event and then work our way down.
Okay.
So the odds on that fight are Bigfoot Silva is plus 180. He's the underdog. And Travis Brown is minus 220. He's the favorite. This is a pretty straightforward fight. It comes down to Brown's going to want to come forward with his quicker hands, impose his will on the feet, strike, be faster, be more athletic than Bigfoot, who's a little more plodding, has good boxing, but he's a little slower. And he's not going to shoot for a quick takedown. If he gets a takedown, he's going to grab you and muscle you to the mat. So Brown has to avoid that. And in terms of betting, I think that he will. I think that Brown is a pretty safe bet. And at minus 220, it's not bad odds. But I looked it up, and Brown at minus 220 is a good bet. But Brown inside the distance at minus 145 is a much better bet.
Wow.
Because I think he's going to take him out first or second round. Bigfoot's not going to be able to drag him to the mat. So minus 145 for inside the distance, I think that's an amazing bet. He's going to take him out early. The only thing you have to worry about with Brown is gassing out. He's shown that once it gets past round 1, round 2, he has a little bit of a deficiency in the gas tank. But I don't see this heavyweight fight going into the later rounds anyway, so it's not really going to matter.
By the way, when I said wow there, it wasn't because of your information, which was pretty good. It's because I actually just noticed you got a haircut. Wow, look at you lining that up.
Looks pretty nice, huh?
Yeah, it does look pretty nice.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, continue.
Also, another thing to note on that fight, you can also get that entire fight not going the distance at minus 350. If you remember from last week, the last main event, Struve and Miocic, was minus 600. So you're getting double the value on this fight not going the distance, which I also think is a really, really good bet. Minus 350, there's no way this one goes the distance. So that's my lock this fight not going the distance, but taking Brown straight up or taking Brown inside the distance are both really good bets.
And by the way, remember the distance is 25 minutes, not 15.
Exactly. There's no way.
There's no way.
chance.
There's no way. I like it.
Yeah, those are interesting numbers. Really good to play.
And by the way, I don't know if I know against Congo he was really tired, but since then, since going to Albuquerque, I think he's gone a little better in the cardio department. Now, I mean, his last fight was really short. Prior to that, he was in Denver, so it's kind of hard to say. But I think he has gone better. You could tell he's slimmed down. He just seems to be in better shape.
Which was the Denver fight? Was that Broughton?
Yeah. But since then, he submitted Griggs, who's really a light heavyweight.
That Broughton fight was rough.
It was rough. It was rough. But it was Denver. I mean, who puts heavyweights on a card?
Well, I don't think it's leaving the first round anyway.
Okay.
So
No. Oh,
that's
really?
my pick.
Oh, wow.
Brown, first round.
Okay. All right.
The next one is Ellenberger and Haran.
Yeah.
Ellenberger's the favorite, minus 360, and Haran is at plus 300. I really like Jake in this one. This is also a very straightforward fight. Jake is going to want to come out early, blitz him, land that huge power shot, or not even. I mean, his striking is good enough to take him apart in the early rounds. Much like Brown, although you debated me on this, I think that Ellenberger has shown that his gas tank is a little worse in later rounds. The Sanchez fight, he was dominating early, and then later on, Sanchez was the one coming on while he was fading a little bit.
I didn't debate you on that, did I?
No, you debated me on Brown. I'm saying
okay.
also
Yeah.
like Brown.
Sure.
His gas tank is a little suspect.
Okay.
Campman fight, he was getting a call from Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh.
Hold on 1 minute.
All right. You go on mute there. You know what's interesting about that fight, by the way, Jake Ellenberger and Jay Haran, that's the fight that was supposed to take place UFC 151. And boy, don't you love a live show like this where we don't take breaks. It's all in front of you. We all just make it happen. We go by the seat of our pants. But I actually think this fight will turn out to be better than the original fight or when it was originally supposed to happen, because remember, Jay Haran took this fight on short notice. He had fought like just a few weeks prior. Jake Ellenberger was coming off the tough loss to Martin Kampmann in June. I think now they have more time to prepare. It's almost like a blessing for them that they've been moved to this card. What do you got in your Rick?
I'm sorry.
Anything?
I didn't hear that, but also Kevin James is going to be on at 320, according to Sony. So
for God's
fingers
sakes.
crossed.
Okay, all right. All that I was saying was, going back to the pick, was I think this fight will be a more entertaining fight than had it taken place at UFC 151, because they were really taking that fight on short notice. Now they have more time. So while 151 cancellation was kind of sucky for all the fighters, for these two guys, I actually think it was a blessing.
I don't think it would have played out that differently. Sure, it's better to have the best conditioned fighters, but I really don't think it would have played out that differently. I think that this is a very straightforward fight. We know what's going to happen here. Jake's either going to take him out early with a huge shot, or he's going to gas, and Haran's going to win a decision. He's going to outlast him and outpoint him in the later rounds. That's the only two ways I see this fight going.
When I make a point like that, it's just in your best interest, by the way, to agree, just for future reference. But okay, fine, fair enough. Very important fight for Jay Haran, getting another shot in the UFC.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good fight because the styles are so different and it's so interesting. But
I think Jay might pull it off. What is he again? What's his line?
He's plus 300, so you're getting 3-1.
Man, remember he fought Askren pretty well.
Absolutely. Well,
great wrestler, right? Not a good striker.
Askren's not going to put that bomb on him like Ellenberger is.
No. But I don't know. I mean, if I'm Ellenberger, I try to take this fight to the ground. Do you agree?
Not necessarily. Yes, his ground and pound would be absolutely dominant, but I think that standing, he's got it that he can land on Haran.
I don't know about that. If I'm fighting Jay Haran, I want to take this fight to the ground. If I'm Ellenberger with my wrestling background.
Oh, you said Haran take it to the ground.
No. If I'm Ellenberger and I'm fighting Jay Haran, given my wrestling background, and I know Haran, he did wrestle in high school, maybe low-level college, but I think that's where he wins the fight. Maybe I'm wrong.
It's not a bad strategy, but I think he wins it standing up.
Okay. You think he stops him?
I think he stops him. Yeah.
Wow.
To get to the numbers on that, Ellenberger inside the distance is plus 232. So not only is it not a minus number, which would mean you'd have to bet that to win 1 or 100, whatever the denomination is. You're getting 2-1 on your money if Ellenberger can stop him inside the distance. That means if he can knock him out or submit him within 3 rounds, you make a little more than 2-1 on your money. I think that's an absolute steal because I think he's going to take him out. He almost took out Campman.
Yeah.
Campman, amazing comeback. That was a great fight. I think he's just going to end it early. Another one that ends early. So my pick on that is Ellenberger, but Ellenberger inside the distance is the bet. That's a great bet.
And if you recall, this is actually a rematch of a fight they had in 2006 in the IFL. I really like this fight. I really do. I think this is a very intriguing fight. All right, so you're going with Ellenberger inside the distance. So that's 2 picks inside the distance that we're going with here. I like it.
Yeah, these are 2 finishes.
All right, let's go with one more, and then I think you have to call Mr. Shamrock, right?
Let's do that now, and
Okay,
then
all
we'll get back to the picks later.
Look at New York Rick. The guy's so so humble, so selfless, as they say. He just he gets the spotlight, and he's like, you know what? I don't need the spotlight right now. Let me defer to Mr. Shamrock. That MMA show is writing on Twitter, Ellenberger needs to take this fight to the ground. After watching Jay against Romario da Silva, there is no chance for Jay standing. Well, that doesn't really make sense. If you're saying Ellenberger needs to take this fight to the ground, then Jay would want to stand, right? Also, someone else, Fight Ghost, is saying, I don't give a SH star T about this Kevin James film. Looks like a POS. Cancel the interview. Give Rick's picks rest of the show. Wow. All right, so let's finish up here before we go. Wow, it's already 3:47. All right, let's go back to the Rick's picks. To recap, Rick picked Travis Brown.
I did.
Inside the distance.
Yep. And the fight not going the distance at minus 350. That's a really good pick.
Yeah. And you also picked Mr. Jake Ellenberger. Also not going the distance.
Correct. Inside the distance plus 232. Good pick.
What else? How do they get the 232? Like, why not 230?
No, it's just the way the line moves. The line will be a certain number, and then based on the action, it'll move. So sometimes the numbers are a little arbitrary.
All right. What else you got?
The only other fight from that card that has a line is Dennis Hallman and Thiago Tavares.
Okay.
I think it's a very interesting fight, a very even fight.
And that's, by the way, on the fuel card.
Correct.
Okay.
That's not on the main card. It's a very interesting fight to me just because they're both grapplers who have their most success from the top, even though one's wrestling and one's jiu-jitsu. They like to get guys down and positionally control them and keep that top control. Whereas traditionally the BJJ guys are on the bottom in guard throwing triangles. So I think that's a very interesting match on who can get the other down, if one can even get the other down. I think that if it stays standing, Tavares has a huge advantage. His hands are much better than Hallman's. But I think that Hallman's size is going to come into play a lot in this fight. If he can make weight comfortably, unlike last time where he missed weight, I think that it's his fight to lose. I think that he's going to use his size, get Tavares down, maybe get his back at some point, and either win a decision, which is what I think is probably most likely, or submit him. So I'm going with the underdog in this one, Dennis Hallman. He's at plus 200, and Tavares was at minus 240.
And is there like an extra line or anything?
No, there were no prop bets on this one.
All right. And
so
by
just
the way,
Hallman.
he did look solid in his lightweight debut, but like you said, he missed weight and looked considerably larger than John McDessie. That was back at UFC 140 in December. So I'm interested to see, because Tavares, pretty big lightweight, but I do think that if Hallman is able to cut the weight properly, he should have the advantage.
So that's it for the ones with betting lines.
Okay.
Some of the other fights, including the 2 main card fights that don't have lines yet, are Josh Neer versus Justin Edwards. Let's just go ahead and say Neer is going to win this. Justin Edwards hasn't really done anything to really distinguish himself all that much.
Are you a little surprised that this is on the main card?
Absolutely. I think that maybe like Simpson.
No, Simpson. That one's. I know they're not too hotsy on that one.
Well, I don't know.
His last fight wasn't great.
Well, that I'll give you. I just think that maybe like the Mike Pierce fight, I think there's a few that just would have been better than this one, in my opinion. The thing about this fight is Josh Neer always brings it. You can count on Josh Neer for an exciting fight. It's a guarantee. It's just that in terms of significance, I don't really see Justin Edwards as being worth this slot on the main card yet. All due respect to him, he just hasn't shown it yet. He very well may be ready for that, but I've yet to see it.
Okay.
So I'm going Neer. TKO submission. I'm not sure how it's going to end, but Neer is going to win this one. That's a guarantee.
Guaranteed? Wait.
Yeah.
So that's 2 locks.
These are all locks. I mean,
Okay.
I'm 5-1 last week.
I mean, really? How's that Paul Sass fight? Is that a lock?
If you remember.
I do remember,
did
but hey,
change
no. There's no sitting on the fence and then going back and saying if you remember. That doesn't fly here.
So yeah, Neer.
Lock.
Pretty much a lock, yeah.
Okay.
He's going to beat Edwards. Next one, John Dodson versus Jussier de Silva.
Yeah,
that's a
Formiga.
great fight.
That's an awesome fight.
For potential number 1 flyweight contender. I don't think there's any other alternative. I think that's got to be the number 1 contender fight.
I think they've actually come out and said it is the number 1 contender fight.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
My pick in this one is Dodson, and I'll tell you why.
Oh.
Even though De Silva is considered a higher ranked flyweight, I recently watched the Ian McCall fight again with De Silva, and it just looked like his control was great. His grappling is amazing, top level, but he wasn't able to really finish McCall once he had him there. And I know that he's won his last 4 in a row by submission, but the level of talent hasn't been close to UFC caliber. Hasn't been Ian McCall, hasn't been a John Dodson, who's just so tough and been around so long. I think that Dodson's spectacular takedown defense, I don't think he's ever been taken down in the UFC. He's going to keep him off, and he's going to keep this standing, and he's going to either knock De Silva out or win a decision based on points. But he's going to tag him on the feet, and he's not going to get taken down. That's how I see the fight playing out. So Dodson's my pick. I have a feeling he's going to be an underdog in the betting lines, but I think that he's going to win this fight.
So annoying that the fight is taking place on Friday and the odds are still not out. You'd think it'd be like, I don't know, give us a week, you know?
Yeah, I'd love to see him.
We need to get on that sponsorship. But yeah, I love Dodson at 125. I think he's. I know he just fought once in the UFC at 125, but looked really good. He's so fast. Can you imagine Dodson versus Mighty Mouse?
That would be amazing.
And if you don't know who Formiga is, he is making his UFC debut. He is really one of the guys who. I'm not going to say he put the flyweight division on the map because obviously it wasn't as famous or popular as it is now because they're in the UFC. But he was like the first big flyweight fighter who was getting a lot of respect, who was, universally ranked as number 1. And then he lost to Ian McCall, Tachi Palace Fights. Since then, he's won a bunch in a row, like 4 or 5 in a row, but did lose to Ian McCall via decision back in 2011. Actually, the same card that David Loazo won the middleweight title for Tachi Palace. And he's one of those guys who, when the UFC came out with the flyweight division, everyone was wondering if he would make his debut in the UFC. A lot of people actually thought that he would get a shot in the tournament, but I think the loss to Ian McCall maybe delayed that. But here he is getting a shot and fighting for the number 1 contender spot. So flyweight's very interesting with Ian McCall still out there, and this fight, of course, and don't sleep on Benavidez. So it's an interesting time. You've got John Lineker. You've got who I still think is going to be very good, and there's some interesting guys out there. So this is a very big fight for the flyweight division, and Formiga, if you're wondering, means ant in Portuguese. He's that small, that tiny.
We got 2 last fights. I've been going back and forth on these 2, but I've come to decisions. The first one is Jeremy Stephens versus Yves Edwards.
Yeah.
I like Stephens just because there's always the potential for his knockout. He's got huge power, and also there's the potential for him taking it to the ground and using some ground and pound. But I like Edwards as a fighter. I just think that this is a really close matchup, but I'm picking Stephens here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I can see that.
And then
This is gonna be a fun fight. I don't see many takedowns in this fight, unless Stevens tries to flip the script like he did against Showtime. But I don't know. I think against Eve Edwards, he stays standing.
I agree. I just think that since he has the potential for that, that's why he's my pick. And then the last one I'm gonna pick is Michael Johnson versus Danny Castillo.
Oh,
This one was the one that gave me the most trouble.
Yeah, that's
just
a tough
because Johnson looks so incredible against El Kakui, Tony Ferguson, in his last fight, and Castillo has been kind of one of those grinders.
Right.
So I really, it was a tough one for me, but I'm going Castillo. He's even come out in some interviews and said, I hope Johnson's working on his wrestling and all that. So I think he's going to try and make this one ugly. He's going to try and get him down, ground and pound. And if he can, he's going to win on control. If he can't pound him out, I think that he's going to be able to get Johnson down. His takedown defense is much improved since coming off Ultimate Fighter, but I still don't think it's at the level where he's going to be able to keep Castillo off him for 3 rounds. I think he's going to eventually get him down and control him.
been looking at some pictures of Castillo. He looks fantastic. Great shape. He's been training with the Diaz brothers in Stockton. I like that. I like that pick. His last fight against John Cholish wasn't the best, but still won the fight. I like that pick. Castillo is one of those WC guys that I wasn't quite sure he'd be able to make the transition to the UFC, but thus far, except for one little roadblock against Jacob Volkman, which was somewhat of a surprising loss just because I thought he'd be able to neutralize his wrestling, he's been pretty good. He's been pretty good.
That's it for my picks for
I forgot about the caller. Do we still have a caller?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, I forgot about that. So let's just recap the picks quickly.
Okay.
What do we got?
We have Brown
Just-
inside
just
the
to put a bow
distance.
on all this. Okay, yeah, Brown inside
And
the distance.
that fight not going the distance. That's a great line. Ellenberger inside the distance. Dennis Hallman. Josh Neer. John Dodson. Jeremy Stevens. And Danny Castillo.
All right, there you have it. It's a solid card. 12 fights. Facebook fights 4 p.m. Eastern. Fuel TV fights 5 p.m. Eastern. FX fights 8 p.m. Eastern. Then it's the Ultimate Fighter at 10. Other fights to look out for that we didn't touch on. Shane Roller versus Jacob Volkman. Big fight for both guys. Bart Pawaszewski returning as a featherweight against Diego Nunes. Phil Harris, who's a flyweight out of Europe that a lot of people are excited about. He's fighting Darren Uye Noyama. Carlo Prater's back, and also Mike Pierce versus Aaron Simpson, as Mr. Rick mentioned earlier. An important fight for those guys at 170. So it's UFC on FX5. Those are the picks from New York Rick, the Rick's picks, if you will. We'll see how he did next Monday on the show.